Hello and welcome back to this tutorial on subsurface scattering. In this tutorial we'll be looking at producing a grape, or in actual fact two grapes. What we're going to be aiming at here is to actually get just the subsurface and surface element of a grape, not a lot of the extra details which will actually go into making a decent shader network. We're looking specifically at the subsurface elements and the surface color and how we balance those. So, grapes. I have looked at grapes, I have eaten grapes, went to the shops today and got some reference for grapes, and looked on the internet for some grapes as well. So we have two varieties of grapes which we're going to look at. The wine-coloured grape and the green-coloured grape. Now the inside of both of these is similar. The difference we have between grapes is skin colour, and with the red grape, just a slight amount of tissue underneath the skin also carries quite a lot of pigmentation. So we're going to start off with the green grape. Okay, let's go back into Maya and let's start putting some Renderman materials on. For my ground plane here, I'm putting a matte material. For my grape itself, I'm putting a Renderman general purpose material. Now, apart from these, the only other thing I have in the scene is a light. Okay, that's a RMS area light, and I want that to be set to about an amplitude of 11. Whoops, 11 will work for me. And I'll just run a quick render on this. So run a render, and image tool will spark up, and we'll get something that looks like this, which is what I'm expecting. Now I don't want to be distracted by the reflection of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my roughness up. For again, I'm in my general purpose material. Increase the roughness slightly. Okay, and let's just make sure we keep this always on top and re-render, and we'll see what it looks like. The rendering is quite quick. It's slightly noisy in this. The reason being I actually have shading rate set quite high. Let's have the shading rate here. Shading rate being set to 10 means I get very fast renders, but the quality is not going to be as good as it will be in final renders. Okay, to get a subsurface happening, what I want to do is work from the inside where that scattering is happening first to the outside where we actually get the thin surface, thin material surface where it interfaces with the air. The reason for this is I find it easier to balance the subsurface, getting the scattering colors correct first, and then worry about the skin, because a lot of what we see with subsurface scattering type materials, a lot of the light which we actually see is the subsurface light being reflected. We mistake it quite often for what is on the surface, but if you take a grape skin from a green grape and actually have a look at it, there's very little colour in that. If we consider the fact that white wine is made from green grapes, red wine is made from red grapes, why do we not get green wine from green grapes? The reason is the skins in actual fact are pretty clear. So the flesh of the grape is what's giving it most of the colour. Let's get in and start playing with the subsurface controls here. Okay, so it's always worthwhile going back to the real world and checking a reference. Now, we're dealing with millimeters here, and I know that this object will work with approximately a 10 millimeter diffuse mean path. Okay, that's the reason for that is because the object itself is approximately that diameter. Okay, so that's how far light will penetrate on average before scattering. And I want to bump up my diffuse mix, because if I don't mix with the diffuse, all we will see is diffuse. And I'm going to re-render this. This is to be expected. We're seeing a lot of noise in our scene. The reason is the samples here for the subsurface scattering are very low. To get good results, I find 256 is going to work for this scene. And we're getting quite a decent result. Now I want to have a look at this with the subsurface in comparison to this without the subsurface. So yeah, we're seeing a difference. Nice softened terminator here. I'm going to actually just spin around here and get my view slightly better. Okay, prefer that. Now our subsurface backscatter color here, this color which is actually scattering from the deep flesh, is white. I want that to be kind of a greenish color, greenish yellowish color. Let's push up our saturation slightly. And for my purposes, I want it to be closer to the yellow and maybe a little bit more saturated. Tweaking it to approximately these values. Let's see how we're going. Okay, I'm guessing this is going to work okay for me. And I'll re-render. And we can see here, it looks like a grape. This section does, this section at the front, not so much. And the reason is this section at the front is predominantly influenced by the tint color. So this tint color here is what I'm going to work with now. We can start off by putting the same color which we just used. It's the first one in our list. And let's see what it looks like. Re-render. Not terrible, not great. I will probably want to tweak this slightly. I may even make this slightly lighter. Okay. And re-render. Okay, let's just see how this is looking. Remember, we still have one more thing which we need to set to get our skin to look correct, and it's going to be the actual surface color. So start off with the color which we had previously, which was the subsurface diffuse mean color down here. Let's re-render this. And you can see we're getting quite a decent grape looking surface with subsurface scattering. All those other good things. We'll see what it looks like without subsurface scattering. If I drop my DMFP down to 0 and re-render, we'll see the result is quite stark in comparison. Pushing this up again and re-render. Okay, quite a difference. Now, one thing which I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually just play a little bit with the albedo tint here. I'm going to put in a texture into this, and I'm going to put in a solid fractal, my favorite of the procedural textures, just so that it's not totally coherent throughout. Let's re-render. So we're getting a bit of variation here. Let's have a look at the difference between this and the previous. Where's my IT catalog gone to? Here it is. Okay, so this was previous, and now it's here. It's subtle, but it's there. You can see that change, hopefully, in the video capture. What the albedo does, again, is it actually tells Renderman how much light is being reflected. So let's go to my surface again. I can actually tweak these settings slightly more, and that might produce better, interesting results. Okay, so it looks like something's happening underneath the skin, and possibly one or two more minor tweaks here. What am I going to do? I can look at playing with diffuse mix. Pushing it in this direction, it's going to give me more of the diffuse. Pushing it in this direction is going to give us more of the subsurface, so we may bias slightly towards the subsurface. And yeah, that's producing some quite nice, interesting results here. We're definitely seeing the effect of the albedo. Okay, maybe a little bit high in the DMFP. I did want this to be 10. Sorry about that. Am I wrong with the slider? Okay. Reasonably grape looking, like working on the maps and working on our actual settings will get better results. Now what I want to have a look at here is, let's just look through the object. Let's find where my light is. Just move this out of the way for a second. Find out where the light is. Back off. Here we go. And I want to look at the backscattering through it. So backscattering is a good way of judging how we're doing here. So let's get this back into my view again. What we have here is the solid fractal texture placement node represented. Okay, and let's re-render this. And we're getting quite a nice backscatter coming through this. So not a bad grape material. Lots more stuff we can do with it to make it realistic, but just in terms of subsurface, we're getting there. Tweaking will always help. It's not something which is going to work first time. It's taken me a fair amount of time just to work out how to get this far. I've been confused quite a lot. Okay, this is my green grape. Now I'm going to try and make a red grape. And I found this much harder to visualize. Fact of the matter is that red grapes actually have the same interior as green grapes. So let's just select this and let's show it. This is my second grape. Display, show selection. And let's hide my red grape. Okay. I'll start off by duplicating the material which I had. So here we go. The material which I was using was, I believe, this one. And I will just go to my material palette here and edit, duplicate, shading network. Okay. And let's just apply that. Oops. Let's apply this. So it should be 9. Yep. Drag it onto this and let's see what it looks like. It's the wrong one. I think it's the wrong one. Let me just check. Apologies for this. A bit of faffing around. Okay. 11. 10. Okay. Just 1 second. I need to actually duplicate this surface here. Something's gone a little bit freaky with my colors. So edit and duplicate. So this should be the new one, I believe. 12, and it's, yes, that's correct. So let's just drag that onto my grape. Okay, as it stands, shaded for a green grape. Let's re-render this and see what it looks like. Looking a bit like a green grape, as we would expect. I'll tweak that albedo a little bit actually. The albedo tint I could do with changing a little bit the amplitude, so it doesn't quite go as far as black. Try to re-render that. Yeah, a bit happier with that. Okay, now we have 2 different types of scattering which we want to figure out how this works. With the material, the skin, the external skin, we'll work on last, but to work on the internal material I'm actually going to go and set this back to white. So the first thing I need to do is look at my tint, and I believe it's going to be something quite close to a reddish color. Let's move this around between red and purple and just to that side of red. Okay, let's try re-rendering. Kind of interesting, but really washed out here. Let's have a look. The reason for it being really washed out is because the material for the surface is white, and we do have a diffuse mix. So currently it's white. Let's go to a pure red and render. Looking incredibly red. Now one thing I can do just to tweak this a little bit is I can push this color imperfection here and try re-rendering. But apart from that, I wanted to look more towards the purplish, the wine color. Okay, this is more wine color, and I want to make it substantially dark. And let's just line this up in my scene, get a bit more of it so I can see where it is. Now again, I'm going to turn my roughness up even more and drop my specular gain just so I can see. This is not exactly the kind of specular response we'd expect for a grape. It is actually a lot more complex, but I'm just trying to see it without getting the confusion of the reflection. And that's not terrible. Reasonable if the grape was actually slightly matte. Okay, and let's just look back through the light. Where is my light? It's over there. And we'll try re-rendering this. And yes, we're getting the nice backscatter through. Zoom in here. So you can see this backscatter through and the albedo which is affecting it. Okay, cool. Again, I'm going to drop the diffuse, not diffuse, specular again. And roughen it up a little bit more. Let's unhide all. Display. Show the last hidden. Okay, let's try rendering both of these. See what we look like. These are not bad. They're not bad. They're not perfect. They're not fit for Ratatouille yet. But in terms of subsurface, we're getting an idea of what we need to do. So that's it for the moment. I'll come back at some point and we'll have a look at some of the extra effects which we need for our grapes. Possibly not in the near future, but in the next week or so. Let's just have a look at the extra effects which I'm talking about here. So the extra effects which I'm talking about are, in actual fact, the kind of bloom which we get on the surface and even striations. A lot of this can be done procedurally, but I may actually paint some stuff up. We'll see how it goes. So that is it for the moment. I hope you enjoy making some grapes, and I hope they work for you.